The air was thick with smoke and whispers. Dark red lights glowed over the alien auction house, hidden deep in the underground markets of Zalanine. Creatures from many worlds had gathered traders, criminals, and warlords. They were here for one thing: to buy living beings, slaves, servants, rare species, and sometimes broken legends. A metal platform rose from the center. Chains rattled as the next item was pulled forward. The crowd hushed. Even the auctioneer stopped grinning for a moment. There she stood tall, silver hair hanging like silk, skin marked with scars and dust. Her eyes burned like fading stars, full of rage, pride, and deep pain. Her wrists and ankles were chained, and a collar of suppression tech locked her powers. Lot 99. The auctioneer shouted, voice echoing. The last known warrior of the Zalthine Empire, once a princess, now a prisoner. She killed 50 men with her bare hands before we caught her. Careful. She bites. He chuckled cruelly. Many in the crowd stepped back. Some laughed nervously. Others looked away. No one wanted a fighter, especially not one like her. She raised her chin, even in chains, refusing to bow. In the shadows of the crowd stood a human man. His clothes were simple, dusty from long travel. He had no guards, no weapons, and no fear in his eyes. His name was Eli, a farmer from a quiet colony moon, but today he had come with a purpose. Eli looked at the alien woman. Really looked. Not just at her body, her scars, her armor pieces still clinging to her side. He looked into her eyes. She stared back, confused, but held his gaze. No bids. The auctioneer called, annoyed. Come now, warriors like her don't come often. A fighter, a killer, a prize. Who dares? Silence. One alien warlord whispered. She's cursed. Another said. Zalthians eat hearts when angry. No one wants her. Someone muttered. She's just trouble. Another laughed. Eli raised his hand. 10 credits, he said softly. The crowd gasped. The auctioneer blinked, then laughed. 10. Are you joking, human? Do you have a death wish? Eli didn't answer. He stepped forward and dropped a small bag of coins. That's all I have, he said, but it's real. Let me take her. The auctioneer stared, then shrugged. Sold. To the brave or foolish human. Lucky you, she. Kill you in your sleep. The crowd laughed, but uneasily. Guards unchained her, though they flinched when she moved. She didn't fight back. She walked toward Eli slowly, like a predator sizing up prey. But then she stopped inches from him. She looked down into his eyes. He was shorter, thinner, but he didn't back away. She tilted her head, then whispered something in her native tongue, her voice low and haunting. Eli didn't understand the words, but her voice carried pain, sorrow, and something more. He nodded gently, without touching her. He turned and began walking toward the exit. She followed, silently. The crowd parted like shadows, afraid of fire. Outside, the air was cold and clean. Stars blinked in the sky above. She looked around. No chains, no guards, no cages. Just space, freedom, and a quiet man who had just bought her. Why? She asked in broken human tongue. Why you buy me? Eli paused, looked up at her, and smiled softly. So you wouldn't be sold to someone cruel, he said. That's all. She stared at him for a long time, then lowered her eyes, not in shame, but in confusion. She didn't know what to do with kindness. Not anymore, but deep inside. Something small flickered, something long buried under pain, battle, and chains, hope. And for the first time in years, she followed a man not out of fear or duty, but curiosity and maybe, just maybe, a new future. The journey back was silent. She sat in the back of the old transport, staring out the window. Her wrists were free, but she still held them close, as if the chains were still there. Eli didn't speak much, just flew. The small ship threw quiet stars. He didn't stare at her, didn't ask questions. He just flew like he had done it 100 times before. They landed on a quiet green planet, far from cities or spaceports. There were no towers or patrols here, only open skies, tall grass, and the soft sound of wind. His home was simple, just a small wooden house, a garden, a barn, and an old robot tending the plants. She stepped outside and looked around. No soldiers. No gates, no surveillance drones. She narrowed her eyes, confused. This place had no locks, no guards. Why bring a warrior here? Eli led her inside. "This is your room," he said, opening a wooden door. Inside was a bed, a table, and a blanket folded neatly. Clean clothes lay beside it, plain but warm. "I didn't know your size," he added quietly. She didn't move, just stood at the door. "Where?" "Chains," she asked slowly. Eli looked at her, a bit surprised. "No chains," he said. "You're not a prisoner." She stepped inside, touching the blanket, the wooden walls, the soft light. This room was warmer than any cell, but her heart didn't believe it yet. That night, he made a simple meal: bread, soup, and fruit. He placed it on the table near her room and walked away. She waited for him to leave before stepping out. The food smelled fresh, but she didn't trust it. She sniffed it, then slowly dipped a finger into the soup. Warm, not poisoned, just food. Her stomach growled, but she fought it. She picked up the spoon but set it down. She couldn't remember the last time she ate without looking over her shoulder. Finally, she sat and ate quietly, slowly, every bite strange and soft. Eli stood outside under the stars, watching the sky. He didn't spy on her. He just gave her space, and for some reason, that made her even more confused. In the days that followed, she explored the land around the house. She found no cameras, no fences, nothing hidden. She could leave any time, but she didn't, not because she was afraid, but because something inside her was waiting, watching him, trying to understand. One morning, Eli handed her a folded cloth work shirt. He said, "I fixed the garden today. You can help if you want." She didn't take it, not at first. But when he walked away and began digging the soil himself, she watched him closely. She waited, then slowly changed into the shirt. It smelled like soap, and the fabric was soft. She joined him without speaking, copying his movements. Dig, place. Seed, cover with soil. Repeat. She didn't understand farming, but the work was calming. Her hands, once used for killing, now pressed dirt gently over new life. Later, she sat under a tree, staring at her fingers. They were dirty, but not with blood. It felt strange. That evening, she walked past his room and paused. Eli was sitting at a small table, fixing a broken part from an old droid. He noticed her and nodded. "You okay?" he asked. She didn't answer. Then she asked, "Why not afraid of me?" Eli placed the tool down and looked at her. "Because I don't see a monster," he said. "I see someone who is hurt. I don't need to control you," he added. "I just want you to feel safe." She looked away quickly. His words felt like soft fire in her chest, warm, but painful too. That night, she didn't lock her door. She lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Her mind raced with memories, battles, screams, betrayal, the auction. Then, his eyes, his voice, the garden, the warmth. She closed her eyes. For the first time in years, sleep came without fear. No chains, no cold cell, no shouting guards. Just silence and a soft breeze outside the window. Morning came with golden light spilling through the curtains. She sat up slowly, surprised she had slept at all. She touched the blanket, then stood. She opened the door and saw Eli placing new seeds in the soil. Without a word, she stepped out to join him again. He looked up, smiled slightly, and handed her a tool. This time, she took it without hesitation. The warrior princess was still there, but something new had started growing. too. And like the seeds in the soil, it only needed time, and maybe a little care. The sun rose slowly over the quiet valley. Its light warmed the trees, the garden, and the small wooden house where peace had begun to grow. But deep inside her, the fire of a warrior still burned. She woke before dawn every day, muscles tense, instincts sharp, even as her hands learned to plant seeds instead of strike. Her mind could not forget the sword. One morning, while fixing a broken fence, she saw it, an old, dusty blade resting under the barn roof. It was not sharp, not polished, but still strong. She picked it up slowly, fingers wrapping around the hilt. It felt natural. It's like a lost part of herself had returned. Eli noticed her holding it from the field. He didn't panic or shout. He walked over quietly and said, "That sword belonged to the man who taught me how to protect this land. Use it if you need it." She blinked, surprised, not afraid. She asked, voice cold, testing him. Eli shook his head. "I'm not afraid of someone trying to heal," he said. "But if that helps you feel safe, keep it." She stood still for a long moment, then carried the sword to her room. She didn't hang it like a trophy. She placed it near the bedclothes, but not in her hands. That night, she dreamed, not of battles, Teza, but of her old sword training. Days when she was young, proud, and believed strength was everything. She saw her old mentor's face again. His voice echoed, "Strength without purpose is just noise." The next day, something inside her shifted. She woke up and went outside with the blade strapped to her back. Not to fight, but to feel grounded. The weight gave her balance. She helped Eli cut trees, move stone, and dig trenches, all without needing to draw the blade. Later, while they rested under a large tree, Eli handed her a bottle of cool water. "You fight like someone who never had rest," he said softly. She frowned. "Rest makes warriors weak," she replied. He looked at her with kind eyes. "Or maybe it makes them stronger because they learn to live." Those words stayed with her all day as she worked. She watched birds build nests. She saw flowers blooming from the seeds she once helped plant. Life around her was growing, not dying. A week later, the peace broke for a moment. A group of traders stopped by Eli's home to sell parts and tools. One of them, an old alien with sharp teeth, noticed her. He laughed loudly. Well, the great Zalthine warrior becomes a farm girl," he mocked. "Did he tame you with kindness? Or did he buy you for other reasons?" She stiffened, rage bubbling inside her. Her hand moved toward the sword strapped across her back. But before she could move, Eli stepped forward. "Leave," he said firmly. "She's not for sale." The trader smirked. "She's dangerous." He hissed. "She's still a killer, just waiting for your weakness." Eli didn't look afraid. "She's free," he replied. "She can leave any time, but she chooses to stay." The trader left with a scoff, but the moment stayed heavy. That night, she sat alone outside, staring at the stars. The sword beside her, untouched. She heard footsteps. Seely approached quietly and sat beside her. "I didn't stop you from fighting him," he said. "I just didn't want you to feel like you had to." She nodded slowly. "I almost forgot who I was," she whispered. "Not a killer, not a queen. I don't know anymore." Eli looked at the sword resting in the grass. "You're someone learning," he said, "and that's more powerful than any title." Silence followed, but it was warm, not cold. A peaceful silence between two people who didn't need to speak to be understood. The next day, she took the sword and placed it above her door, not as a weapon, but as a memory. It was no longer something she needed to hold every day. Instead, she spent her time learning how to cook simple meals, how to fix old machines, how to laugh without guilt, how to walk barefoot on soft soil and not fear every shadow. The warrior was still inside her. But she was no longer only that. She was becoming something new, something more, and maybe something free. The sun was gentle that morning. The clouds above moved slowly, painting soft shadows on the ground. Birds sang. Wind danced through the tall grass, and for the first time in years, she felt like the world wasn't against her. She stood outside, holding a wooden bucket. She had learned to carry water without spilling, to cook without burning the pot, to gather eggs without crushing them in her strong hands. These small things, once meaningless, now felt like victories. Inside the kitchen, Eli was trying to bake something. She peeked in, curious, and saw him blow air into a bowl of flour by accident. A white cloud puffed into his face, making him cough and sneeze. His eyes squinted, nose covered in powder. She didn't mean to do it. It came out of nowhere. A strange sound escaped her mouth, soft at first, then louder. It was a laugh. Awkward, short, almost broken, but a real laugh. Eli turned and froze. Shocked, then he smiled, wiping flour from his face. "I guess I deserved that," he said playfully. She covered her mouth, wide-eyed eye. "I laugh?" she asked, confused by her own reaction. Eli nodded, still smiling. "Yeah," he said, "you just did. You should do it more." She looked down, a small smile forming on her lips. It felt strange, like her face didn't know how to move that way anymore. But it wasn't painful. It was warm, that afternoon. They sat under the big tree in the field. Eli gave her an old book filled with hand-drawn stories and pictures. She struggled with some of the human words, but Eli helped, sounding them out with her. She stumbled over funny phrases, and when he corrected her, she hit his shoulder gently. "Your language is strange," she said. "So many words for one feeling." Eli chuckled. "Maybe our feelings are always a little mixed," he replied. She looked at him, thoughtful. "In my world, we had only one word for love," she said softly. "But here, you have many." That evening, they cooked dinner together. She chopped vegetables while Eli stirred the pot. He taught her how to use herbs. She taught him how to slice without losing fingers as they sat to eat. She looked at the table, then at Eli. "This is new," she said. Eli raised an eyebrow. "What is this feeling?" she said, placing a hand on her chest. "I do not feel ready to fight. I feel calm." Eli nodded slowly. "That's called peace," he said. "Not everyone gets to feel it." She watched the flames dance in the fireplace. Her mind returned to old battles, her old name, her crown. She used to sit on a throne made of stone and fear. Now she sat on a wooden chair beside a man who offered her soup and safety. And somehow, this chair felt stronger than any throne ever did. Later that night, a knock came at the door. It was a local woman with her small child. Their farming cart had broken down on the road. Eli grabbed his tools and stepped outside to help the child. Looked up at the tall alien woman standing in the corner. Her sharp features and glowing eyes made the little boy nervous. He tugged on his mother's arm, whispering, "Is she a monster?" The question stabbed her heart. She didn't move, unsure what to say. But Eli looked back from the door, smiling gently. "She's not a monster," he said. "She's a protector." The boy blinked, then stepped forward shyly. "Were you in a war?" he asked. She knelt slowly, her voice soft. "Yes," she said, "but not anymore." The boy nodded, then held out a small rock he had picked up. "It's shiny," he said. "You can have it." She took it gently, eyes wide. "A gift, not a weapon." She closed her hand around it and whispered, "Thank you," when they left. She stood at the door, looking at the little stone in her palm. "Why did you say I'm a protector?" she asked Eli. He looked at her, wiping sweat from his brow. "Because you are," he said, "even when you don't know it." That night, she sat near the fire with the stone in her hand. She smiled again, this time without confusion. It didn't feel strange anymore. It felt right, and as the stars lit the sky, she whispered to herself, maybe I'm not just a warrior. Maybe I'm finally becoming human too. The wind had a different smell that morning. It was colder, sharper, like something was watching. She stood near the garden with a basket of vegetables in her arms. The birds were quiet, the air still, even. The soil under her feet felt tense. Eli was inside fixing a power coil. He didn't notice the shadows moving beyond the trees, but she did. Her warrior blood whispered in her bones danger was near. Without a word, she dropped the basket and moved silently toward the edge of the field. There, through the tall grass, she saw them. 2 figures, cloaked, armed, slow, but steady. They were not traders. They were hunters. She returned to the house quickly, her steps quiet but firm. Eli, she said, voice low. We're being watched. He looked up, wiping grease from his hands. Are you sure? She nodded. I know, they're kind, she whispered. They're not here to talk. He didn't argue. He grabbed an old plasma pistol from a drawer, one she had never seen him use. I never wanted to fire this again, he said softly. But if they came for you, I'll stand with you. She stared at him, stunned. He was not strong, not trained in war, but still. He stood beside her, not to command her, not to hide behind her, but to protect her. The first blast came from the sky. A small ship landed behind the house, shaking the ground. The 2 cloaked hunters stepped out, rifles in hand. One was tall and green-skinned. The other short but armored. They spoke in galactic trade tongue. Return the property, the tall one growled. She is Zalthine Royal, the other hissed. She is not yours to keep. Eli stepped forward, his voice calm but steady. She's not property. He said, she's free. The hunters laughed. Then why did you buy her? Don't lie to us, human. She is worth 100 lives. She stepped beside Eli. Okay, her eyes glowing faintly now. I am not yours, she said, voice cold and clear. You have no claim over me. The hunters raised their weapons. Then, die with your little human pet. One spat, but before they could fire, she moved, fast as lightning. She grabbed the sword above her door and spun forward. The blade clashed with metal. Sparks flew. She struck one of them hard in the side, sending him crashing into the wall. Eli ducked behind the stone fence and returned fire with his old pistol. He wasn't perfect, but he wasn't afraid either. The short hunter aimed at Eli. She roared, louder than thunder, and slammed her body into him. They rolled across the ground, dust flying. He tried to stab her, but she caught the blade with her bare hand. Blood dripped from her palm, but she didn't let go. She twisted the weapon out of his grip and threw him into the side of their ship. The tall hunter rose, aiming again, but this time Eli shot first. The blast hit the hunter's shoulder, knocking him back, breathing hard. She stood in front of Eli, sword raised, blood on her arm. He stood behind her, chest heaving, smoke rising from his pistol. The 2 hunters crawled back to their ship, wounded, beaten, humiliated. This isn't over, one hissed. She narrowed her eyes. It is for you, she said. Next time, you won't walk away. The ship took off. Roaring into the sky, silence returned to the valley. But the peace was broken. Eli dropped the pistol, his hands shaking now. She turned quickly and held his arm. You're hurt, she said. He shook his head. Just tired, he said, trying to smile. You were incredible. She looked at her bloody hand, then at him. You stood in front of me, she whispered. Why? Eli met her gaze. Serious now, because no one should ever make you feel like property again. Because you matter, her breath caught. No one had said that to her, not even her own people. Not as a warrior, not as a princess. She sat down beside him, sword still in her lap. The ground around them was scarred. But they were alive, together. She leaned against him softly and whispered, "No one has ever fought for me." The house smelled of smoke and burned grass. The damage from the fight still scarred the ground. Broken pieces of the fence lay scattered. The wooden door was cracked, and the garden had been trampled by heavy boots. But inside the house, something stronger than fear was growing. She sat by the fire, her hand bandaged, her sword rested beside her, clean and quiet. Eli stirred a pot gently, though his arm was still sore from the fall. Neither of them spoke for a long time. The fire cracked softly. Then she said in a low voice, "They'll come again." Eli nodded slowly. "They might," he replied. "But we'll be ready." She turned to him, her voice serious. "You don't understand," she said. "I was not just a warrior. I was a symbol of bloodlines, of strength, of rebellion." Eli looked at her, waiting. "I was trained to fight until death," she continued. "But now, I don't know who I am." She touched the bandage. "I don't feel like a princess anymore." Eli placed a bowl in front of her and sat beside her. "You don't have to be," he said gently. "You don't owe anyone a title." She stared into the bowl of soup, steam rising into her tired eyes. "Then what am I now?" she whispered. He looked at her for a long moment. "You're someone who survived," he said. "You're someone who learned how to live again." She didn't reply. Instead, she ate slowly, tasting every bite like it was the first time. The next morning, Eli worked on repairing the fence. She joined him without needing to be asked. They moved together, cutting, lifting, nailing, not as master and servant, not as warrior and farmer, but as two people building something new. After the repairs, Eli led her to the small storage room. Inside was a surprise. He had carved a symbol into a wooden shield and hung it on the wall. Below it, folded carefully, was her old royal armor, cleaned, mended, but no longer shining like before. It had lost its glory, but not its history. She stepped forward slowly, hands brushing the metal. "I thought you hated what I was," she said softly. Eli shook his head. "I never hated it," he replied. "I just didn't want you to think that's all you could ever be." She turned around and looked at him. "You kept this." "I didn't throw it away," he said, "because it's part of you. But it doesn't define your future." She took off the cloak she had worn since the auction and gently placed it beside the armor. Then she reached into the pouch at her side and pulled out something small, her royal circlet. Once a symbol of command and bloodline, she looked at it in silence, then slowly set it on the floor. She didn't break it, didn't toss it in anger. She just placed it down gently and stepped over it. Eli said nothing, but the look in his eyes said everything: respect, pride, and quiet understanding. Later that evening, as the stars returned to the sky, they sat on the porch, watching the horizon. A soft breeze passed, brushing her hair across her face. She didn't move it. She was thinking deeply. "Do you think I can be someone new?" she asked. Eli didn't hesitate. "You already are," he said. "You're not who you were at the auction. You're not who you were on the battlefield. You're something stronger." She looked at her hands, once used for war, now used for building and care. She flexed her fingers slowly, then reached over and placed one hand gently over his. "I want to stay," she said simply. "I don't care about thrones or crowns or blood. This land, this peace, this feeling, this is my new kingdom." Eli smiled, not with surprise, but with quiet joy. "I hoped you'd say that," he said. He stood up and reached into a small box beside the door. Inside was something simpler necklace he made himself. It had a carved wooden piece shaped like a seed. She held it in her hand, confused. "It's not fancy," Eli said with a shrug, "but it means growth, life, a new start." She stared at it for a long moment, then slowly tied it around her neck. The wood rested against her chest, light but powerful, no longer a royal symbol. No longer a weapon, just a promise. And when she looked at Eli again, her voice was calm and certain. "I am not their princess anymore." She said, "I am your partner." Spring came early to the valley that year. Rain had passed. The soil was rich, and the seeds they planted weeks ago had begun to sprout. Green leaves stretched toward the sky. Color returned to the land, and in the middle of it all, she stood no longer a stranger, no longer a weapon, but someone who belonged. She wore simple clothes now, rough fabric stained with earth and life. The warrior's armor sat untouched inside the house. The sword rested above the door, still. Clean, still respected, but it hadn't been touched in weeks. Eli was building a new shed at the back of the house. She helped him measure the wood and carry beams. They didn't need to talk much. Their rhythm was smooth, like music they both understood. When she laughed now, it came freely, not awkward, not forced. It came from deep within. Children from nearby farms ran to her, called her name. She taught them balance and strength, how to climb trees, how to breathe before a hard decision. She no longer shouted, she spoke, and they listened. Not because they feared her, but because they trusted her. One evening, after the stars had returned to their place in the sky, she and Eli sat beside the fireplace, sharing quiet moments. She was carving a small wooden figure, something she had learned from him, a simple shape, a small warrior with no weapon, only open hands. Eli stood up and walked into the back room. When he returned, he held a small box made of dark wood. He opened it slowly and pulled out a handmade ring. It was not gold, not silver, but carved from a tree near their home, strong, smooth, beautiful. He knelt without speaking. She stared at him in surprise, not fear, not shocks, just quiet emotion. "Will you stay?" he asked softly. "Not as a guest, not as someone I rescued, but as someone I want beside me for the rest of our lives." Her hands trembled slightly. As she took the ring, no one had ever asked her before. People had commanded her, feared her, used Herb, never chosen her. She slid the ring on her finger and nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "I've already stayed in your home. Now I will stay in your heart." They stood together under the moonlight. She rested her head on his shoulder, no crown, no throne, just two souls finding peace. Weeks passed, the house grew, the garden flourished. The nearby villagers began calling their home the quiet stronghold, because even though there were no walls, everyone felt safe near it. One afternoon, a traveler passed through and asked, "Who lives here?" A child replied, "The gentle human, and the alien warrior who became a mother to us all." She heard the words from the window and smiled. She wasn't a queen, but she had something far better, a place to belong, a partner to love, a life to grow. Inside the barn, a small cradle was being built, not because of a war, not because of duty, but because something new was coming, a future born not from bloodlines, but from love. And as the stars blinked softly above their land, she looked up, placed her hand over the wooden ring, and whispered, "This is the life I never thought I'd have. But now that it's mine, I will protect it with all my heart."